Welcome to the Doggy Dutch Audio Stories, where weekly card readings open into reflections on manifestation, systems, sovereignty, and everyday life. Brought to you by the Etsy shop Alchemy of Me. The Line is Not the Limit coloring book and the Walking the Universe ecosystem for manifestation. Episode 15. Have you ever felt caught between a rock and a hard place with money? Like no matter what you did, you could never quite get your foot in the door? This episode is for moments like those. The story for today is titled, For the Love of Money.
Dutch has been reflecting on his social justice and manifestation oracle card pull. A reading drawn using the thesis of us oracle cards for social justice, from the book Human Not Machine by Dr. Siobhan Ballasing Williams, available from Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The cards that came forward were Remove Fears, Reclaim Connection, and Reclaim Storytelling. Dutch is letting the reading sit beside him, carrying the cards quietly, noticing what reveals itself.
It is morning, and Dutch wakes up slowly. Before he gets out of bed, he reaches over to the nightstand, grabs his phone, and checks the time. And that's when he sees the notification on the screen. His checking account is overdrawn again.
Dutch jumps out of bed, panicking. His body reacts before he can even process what is happening. He recognizes the internal drop. He notices his heart racing, and he experiences a sensation of dread, accompanied by a sense of here again.
Dutch thinks of the money pattern he has been finding himself in recently. The pattern starts with tight, followed by juggle, then delay, which is followed by catch up, only to circle back to tight again, leaving him feeling caught between a rock and a hard place financially.
He puts the phone down, just to give himself a moment of breath. In that small pause, the spiral begins as his mind whispers. Money is the root of all evil, which fuels the fire in his nervous system. That thought tells him that money is dangerous, something to be wary of, something that is working against him right now, showing up as its evil self with the overdraft.
In the blink of an eye, the next thought surfaces. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And this one tells him there is not enough for everyone, that he is in this and does not have what he needs because others have taken the resources and left none for him.
Without realizing it, Dutch is pacing, back and forth across the room, moving frantically like the frenzied thoughts moving through his mind, thoughts spreading through him like wildfire, arriving faster than his feet can move.
Dutch catches himself. The pacing, the spiral, the way the room has gotten smaller without the walls moving. He stops and doesn't about turn, reaching away from the spiral toward his emergency money words, softly repeating them to himself instead.
I can handle this moment. This is information, not identity.
Dutch takes a breath and says his emergency words a bit louder.
I can handle this moment. This is information, not identity.
And then another breath, speaking boldly.
I can handle this moment. This is information, not identity.
Something in his system shifts ever so slightly. Dutch notices he is standing still. His body settles, not fully but just enough. And he sits back down on the edge of the bed.
The emergency words accomplished what they were supposed to. They had stopped the free fall and slowed the spiral. But sitting there in the quiet after the pacing, Dutch felt something else forming. The emergency words were enough to stop the fall, but he noticed they were not enough to build something different.
And that was the thing. Dutch didn't just want to stop falling. When it came to the money pattern he was in, Dutch was at the end of his rope. He wanted a different relationship with money than what he had been socialized into. One where he didn't feel like he and money were stuck in first gear all the time.
He wanted a relationship with money where he didn't always feel like he was hanging in there with it or barking up the wrong tree. He wanted something of his own, something he had consciously chosen. He'd had this thought before and always found himself kicking that can down the road.
But today he was ready to step up to the plate and tackle it head on. Dutch believed in authorship. So he got up, found a pen and paper, and sat down at the kitchen counter, ready to take the lead and dive right in. Ready to turn over a new leaf.
First, he thought about what his relationship with money actually was. And he heard the whispers from his conditioning fighting like crabs in a barrel to rise up and answer.
The early bird catches the worm. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. A fool and his money are soon parted. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Money corrupts. A penny saved is a penny earned.
Dutch had heard that language all his life. It sounded like wisdom. It was passed down like wisdom. But what it taught him, what it quietly installed, was a particular kind of fear.
Fear that money was dangerous. That it was bad. That abundance was zero-sum. If someone had money, it came from someone who didn't. Fear that he had to struggle for stability because it didn't come easy. Fear that having one good thing meant losing another. Fear he couldn't have money and rest or money and peace or money and ease. Fear that expecting good things was foolish. Fear that said if finances were strained, or if money was tight, or if funds were low, he was the fault.
Dutch knew there was something else beyond that. He knew the wealth gap was orchestrated. He knew some communities started behind, not by choice but by design. They were redlined out and locked out of the pie before they ever got to the table. Wealth interrupted before it could take root, moralized and marketed as a dog-eat-dog world. Reduced and simplified into nothing more than a mere cultural idiom.
But Dutch knew that gap was engineered by systems, that the gap between what was needed and what was available was structural. He knew that systems created the gap, and then blamed the person standing in it, telling them it was sink or swim.
Dutch knew there were fail-safe measures built into systems so that systems could maintain themselves. Measures that punished, measures that extracted a pound of flesh, while simultaneously protecting systems and veiling them behind a curtain. Things like overdraft fees compounding most heavily on the people who could least afford them. Salt poured in a wound that was already there.
Systems said look before you leap, and then blamed him for the fall without taking ownership for the chasm across the canyon they constructed.
Systems commanded he pull himself up by his bootstraps, while insidiously and covertly cutting the straps.
Systems told him he reaped what he had sown, while salting the earth before he ever planted and hoarding the seeds.
And systems said let bygones be bygones. Don't make waves, which meant leave the past unexamined, leave the present undisturbed. And if something feels off, learn to live with it. Because life was a roller coaster after all.
All of it intentionally designed for the protection and perpetuation of systems.
Dutch noticed how contemporary spirituality took a page out of the book systems used, dressing the same instruction in spiritual language, wrapping the same verdict in the language of vibration and alignment.
Underneath sayings like the divine helps those who help themselves, and underneath the dogma of think differently, fix your vibration, correct your alignment, ignore the now and act as if, was the same architecture.
The exact same socializations.
The system and its sayings repackaged but unchanged, which meant the structural cause could disappear behind smoke and mirrors while personal indictment remained.
The system's fingerprints got wiped clean, while the bill got handed back to Dutch.
But sitting there with the pen in his hand, Dutch paused and thought.
This is not a relationship I created. It is one I was handed. And if it was handed to me, I could choose something different.
And now that the pieces were finally connecting, Dutch was beginning to have some understanding of why the relationship with money felt the way it did. An understanding of why the fear arrived. And an understanding of why the spiral came so easily.
It had been conditioned and handed down. It was installed and reinforced, long before he ever held a bank account.
Now that he had an idea of what he had been conditioned into, he thought about the ingredients that were common across his chosen relationships, also known as his friendships.
Those bonds had reciprocity. They were imbrued with welcome. They were rooted in steadiness. And they had the ability to hold difficulty without breaking. And he wanted that with money. Dutch felt like a fish out of water as he tried to write his first words on the paper. Like he was grasping at straws. But he was determined to author his own relationship with money. On his own terms. One word at a time.
So Dutch got the ball rolling, pen in hand, and began writing. Not borrowed words. His own. Built for the relationship he wanted to have with money. Dutch wrote,
Dear Money, you and I are friends, and we share a beautiful life together. I choose you in the abundant seasons and in the lean ones. In flow and in ebb, I stay present with you. I am learning to tend our connection with care and with love. I am not turning away from you in this or any moment of financial constraint. Fear does not get to decide how I relate to you. I choose to show up with openness and welcome. I am committed to us through every season. I savor the seasons of harvest, and in the dark of night, I am the lighthouse, steady and sure, keeping the light on so you always know where home is. Money, you have made so many things possible for me. I appreciate all you have brought into my world, and I look forward to what we unfold in life together. Yours with love, Dutch.
Dutch realized that not only had he written a money love letter, but each line in it could be used on its own, as an affirmation for anchoring his friendship with money. And the cards sat beside him through all of it. Remove fears. Reclaim connection. Surrender resistance. Not as instructions, as recognition.
Remove fears, for the fear systems installed, the fear of the moment, the fear of the future, the fear of money.
Reclaim connection, of his bond to money on his own terms, not the system's terms, not the spiritual teaching's prescription. A relationship consciously chosen, built on reciprocity, welcome, care, and compassion.
Reclaim storytelling. By surrendering the story systems handed him about money and about himself to make room for something he consciously chose.
Dutch looked at what he had accomplished. He had named the fear. He had traced it back to where it came from. He had written his own words for a relationship with money that no system, no saying, no teaching had handed him. Something built from scratch.
Dutch was truly excited to see how his friendship with money would evolve. He was genuinely thrilled to be choosing something different.
And for Dutch, that felt like the beginning of a beautiful love story. The end.
If something in this met you, take a breath with Dutch and let it simmer for a moment. Let's breathe in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold together. 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep noticing what reveals itself along the way. And remember, if you want your own readings, the Thesis of Us Oracle cards are available at Alchemy of Me on Etsy.